There's a really interesting channel that I just discovered on SPCX that I wanted to share with you. Now, something interesting happened over the last week. We got a strong bounce from 105 all the way up to $149 and change. I'm not going to say IPO price because I know that was 135, but you can see the 150 was the opening candle. I know some people were giving me a hard time about that in my last video. The opening candle from SPCX here, 150 resistance. We had a strong bounce all the way up to this level. Now, what are we doing? We're overlapping in price. We're showing compression. We're messing with the bulls. We're messing with the bears. But something underlying is happening here. And it's a small channel. Check this out. Right across there, we have a potential support. And I say that because we got a nice strong bounce off that area today. So check this out. Maybe, just maybe, we have a channel forming. Now, here's what I'm watching SPCX for come Monday, right? If we can retrace and backfill it through the candle from Friday and get above the 144 level, that's a really good sign that we're probably going to retest 150 and maybe even push up into that a little bit. That would potentially put the top of the channel here up into 150 to 154. Now, I like to use more of a programmatic approach to trading with if-then rules over under areas. Above 144, bullish. Below this support at 135 is bearish all the way down to 130, maybe even lower. Some people were saying they think it's actually going to dip down below $100. We'll see. Currently, we still have a little bit of upward momentum, but it's starting to slow down. Let's look at the Heikin Ashi and see what's going on here. Yeah, look at this. Last night, I had shared that this bullish momentum cycle, this payday cycle, had ended because we formed a lower high. And today, check this out. Another lower high, another lower low, but it's kind of a bit of a doji. It's a bit of a compression, right? Sometimes we see these expansion and then compression, expansion, compression. We don't know which way it's going to break, but as soon as it does, you could potentially get short below 135 or buy above 144 until it breaks, right? You just got to keep an eye on it. That's why we have these levels. Now, I got a few other stocks I want to cover today. Reddit, this is the big story. I've also got Tesla, Apple, and Google, but let's start with Reddit. This is a very cool story here. I love this. It's been compressing down here. I want to show you some analysis that I've been doing for our group here for the last few months on Reddit, and this is an incredibly important time for this. Here's my long-term view, my long-term channel on Reddit that I've been doing, for the last year or so, right? I love the way that it's been bouncing off this long-term support. That shows that the market is respecting this support. Importantly as well, check this out. The lows are getting higher and higher and higher. Every time we move forward, we start to move higher. And here's something that I actually really like. Check this out. If we come down here, look at this. I actually like this, and I know the bulls, if you got shaken out here, you're not going to like me for saying this, but here's a low. Look at this. Right here on earnings, you can see we actually broke that low. What do we call that? We call that a liquidity sweep. Everybody and their grandma probably had their stop below this. That's the wrong way to trade, right? It broke below it, stopped everybody out, whacked the beehive, and then goes boom and breaks to the upside. Now, why did it move? I think I read that they're being added to the S&P 500. That's incredible news. Now, from a technical standpoint, we had a doji, we had a break, we had a gap. I love the fact that the MACD is curling up with some Momo. If this MACD continues, I could see this MACD playing out like this, right? Where would that put Reddit? Probably like this, right? Up into the 200 to 225 range. Here's what's very cool about that. If you notice this chart, it's really kind of broken down into a couple different areas, right? You have one from about 180 down to about 130. And then you have another one that starts at 180 and goes up to about 250, gosh, as high as $280. Now, these areas act as value. And the cool thing about trading stocks and doing technical analysis is understanding that when a stock starts to drift into a new value area, it can easily get sucked all the way to the top of the value. In the same regard, when it starts to drop into a new value area, it can get sucked all the way to the bottom of the value area. You could put volume profile on your chart, or you could just learn to read the value areas, the over under areas, everything like that. So I really like this setup. I think that it's very likely Reddit has a lot more upside. And I think if it can get above and stay above 185, which is essentially the high of the day today, we're going to move up to 200 fairly quickly, up to 205. We might have a little bit of compression here, but in the end, as long as it holds above the shelf, maybe 160, 170, I think ongoingly, this is bullish momentum. A break above 185 is very bullish, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing continue to move higher, maybe even get up to new all-time highs. I want to take a quick peek at its fundamentals here, right? Good fundamentals, good margins, good quarterly free cash flow, no dividends yet. Very nice. Look at this. They're making money, right? They're making money. The market likes that. They're being added to the S&P 500. This is a good sign. This is very good for Reddit. So I want to look at Tesla, Apple, and Google next. In last night's video, I highlighted Tesla, specifically that the MACD is actually a silly, simple indicator that works really great with Tesla. And part of the reason for that is once this stock gets going and it starts getting a lot of momentum, it's like a freight train. It just runs in that direction. Now that could be bullish and that could be bearish. You don't want to mess with it. You don't want to try and catch a falling knife. You don't want to try and short it as it's rising. You just want to go with the momentum. The MACD is bullish right now. We're making good progress. There's one thing I don't love though. Look at this. We have a gap here. And we closed right on that, folks. Look, we basically pierced into the gap. The market was like, I don't know about this. We sold off, and now we have this funny little doji candle. So come Monday, if we can move back up into this wick from 340 to 350, I would consider that to be super bullish. But breaking too far below that 340 area, gosh, I think that puts like 320 back on the table. So keep your eye on that. Next, we're going to take a quick peek on Apple and then Google. Apple, I had mentioned that yesterday, if we could get above this area, which was the high from the day before, right, then it would start to have a little bit of bullish momentum. Well, we got a close 72 cents. So not a ton, but you can see what we do have is we have our first green candle. The MACD, it's not crossed to the bulls yet. And similarly to Tesla, what we've discovered is that when the MACD is bearish like this, most of the time, the bullish cycles only last for a few days, and they're not even really worth trading. But here's the thing. The MACD has been crossed now for a few weeks. It might be time for it to swirl back around, so I'm going to put a tight one on this and just continue to say, as long as it holds above this threshold, I'm going to give it space. $300 if you want to be super tight, $304. As long as it holds above this, it still has a good opportunity to bounce. Last is Google. Now, this is a very cool setup. I mentioned this a lot. Stocks, these big tech stocks, they love to go through cycles. I call them payday cycles. You can use the Heikin-Ashi chart for them, right? So huge difference between Heikin-Ashi, candle, Heikin-Ashi, candle, Heikin-Ashi, right? Now, they expand, they compress. Now, where do you think you want to get in these cycles? Right at that compression, right? Now, what I like to do is use these compressions as the entry and stop area, right? So you could potentially buy above this area at 350, put your stop below it at 344. You got a $6 risk there. Now, what I don't love, though, is that the MACD is kind of unwinding a little bit. It's very neutral. It's basically hovering the zero. So there's still a little bit of compression risk in here. But I like the fact it rallied high, it pulled back, it stopped. It's forming a doji. Very interesting setup here for Google. Hey, I hope you liked this quick video, that you have a great weekend. If you follow along, you're going to get more of my updates. I'm going to be filming these more often. So give us a follow, and we'll see you in the next video.